Good morning, you're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. Here are the top stories for the hour. A car plows through Vancouver Filipino Festival, killing at least 11. North Korea confirmed for the first time on Monday that it has sent troops to fight for Russia in the war with Ukraine. The death toll from a blast at Iran's Bandar Abbas port rises to 40. A tragic incident struck a Filipino street festival in Vancouver when a man drove into a crowd, killing at least 11 people. Authorities have confirmed that the attack was not linked to terrorism. A 30-year-old man who has a significant history of mental health-related interactions with police was arrested at the scene and is now in custody.
Incident in Vancouver at a Filipino street festival was not an act of terrorism, Vancouver police said, after at least 11 people were killed when a man drove into a crowd on Saturday evening. The incident occurred shortly after 8 p.m. local time near the Lapu Lapu Day block party. Eyewitnesses described a chaotic scene with victims scattered across the street.
A lone suspect, subject male with one vehicle, drove through a crowded community event occurring near here. That male was taken into custody at the scene by the crowd. It was a Filipino community event. The crowd immediately called police. We then took custody of the subject, and he is now in our custody.
I don't even know what to say. This was a great day. Wonderful event. Huge community event. And to have it end in tragedy like this, it won't break us or the community, but it's horrible.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said on X, "I am devastated to hear about the horrific events at the Lapu Lapu Festival in Vancouver earlier this evening." Vancouver's Mayor Ken Sim and British Columbia Premier David Eby posted similar comments on X. The festival, celebrating Filipino heritage and honouring 16th century leader Lapu Lapu, had attracted thousands of attendees.
A Vancouver neighbourhood is in mourning as tributes grow at the site of a deadly vehicle attack that claimed 11 lives during a Filipino festival.
Grieving residents gathered on Sunday to lay flowers and pay tribute at a growing memorial near the scene of a deadly vehicle attack during a Filipino community festival in Vancouver. The memorial, marked by floral tributes, handwritten messages, and emotional embraces, formed near the site where at least 11 people were killed and dozens more injured after a man drove an SUV into a crowd on Saturday evening. People stood in silence, some visibly emotional, while others added bouquets and personal tokens, including a plush toy and a Philippine flag wrapped around white carnations. Signs expressing solidarity and love were placed at the site as the community struggled to process the tragedy. Police officers continued to canvass the neighbourhood, going door to door in search of eyewitnesses. A heavy security presence remained near the cordoned-off area along Fraser Street, where the incident took place during a local celebration honouring Philippine national hero Lapu Lapu. Authorities arrested a 30-year-old Vancouver man at the scene and confirmed he had a history of mental health issues. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has visited Vancouver, meeting with local officials and community members to offer his condolences and support.
A deadly car attack occurred on the eve of the federal elections in Canada. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney paused election campaigning after the tragedy in Vancouver. The issue of labour and tariffs is the highlight of this campaign.
Canadians will head to the polls on Monday for a federal election that could reshape the country's future at home and abroad. The race pits Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney, a former central bank governor, against Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, whose populist campaign has resonated with young voters frustrated by high living costs. The Liberals are slightly ahead, with 40.5% support compared to 37.5% for the Conservatives. The election comes amid unprecedented tensions with the United States. US President Donald Trump's controversial remarks about Canada have jolted the political landscape.
You've all given so much, but I'm going to use my hockey analogy again. We are down to 2 minutes in Game 7 for the Stanley Cup. We need to leave everything on the ice. So a few more door knocks, a few more phone calls, a few more conversations, a few more conversions. We want everyone possible to support us, regardless of which party they supported in the past. The country's coming together. We can win.
Carney has campaigned on strengthening Canadian sovereignty and diversifying economic ties beyond the US market. Poilievre, while critical of Trump's tariffs, has offered a more cautious response. His focus remains on reducing taxes, cutting bureaucracy and making housing more affordable, key issues particularly among younger Canadians.
We're voting for change because we love this country and we want every single person to have the promise of Canada, that anyone who works hard can have a great life in a beautiful, affordable home on a safe street under our proud flag. That's the change we need. That's the hope we offer. Now let's vote to bring it home.
Donald Trump re-emerged as a factor in Canada's election campaign earlier this week after he declared that the United States did not need Canadian-made autos and said he might increase tariffs on vehicles imported from Canada. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney paused election campaigning after at least 9 people were killed when a man drove through a crowd at a community festival in Vancouver. Both Carney and Poilievre issued statements of condolence. Polls open nationwide tomorrow at 9 a.m. local time and close at 9:30 p.m, with results expected late Monday night.
In New Jersey, President Donald Trump called on Russia to halt its attacks on Ukraine. After a key meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Vatican, Trump also shared his views on US support for Ukraine and his disappointment with Russia's actions.
President Donald Trump urged Russia to stop its attacks in Ukraine, while his top diplomat said the United States might walk away from peace efforts if it does not see progress. Speaking to reporters in New Jersey, Trump said he was disappointed that Russia has continued to attack Ukraine and said his one-on-one meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Vatican on Saturday had gone well.
He needs more weapons, but he's been saying that for 3 years, He needs more weapons, and we're going to see what happens. I want to see what happens with respect to Russia, because Russia had been surprised and disappointed, very disappointed that they did the bombing of those places after discussions.
Trump and Zelensky, who were in Rome for the funeral of Pope Francis, met in a Vatican basilica on Saturday to try to revive faltering efforts to end the war in Ukraine. The meeting was the first between the two leaders since an angry encounter in the White House Oval Office in February, and comes at a critical time in negotiations aimed at bringing an end to the conflict. Answering to the questions of reporters, he mentioned about his relationship with President Zelensky after that meeting.
It was never bad. We had a little dispute because I disagreed with something he said, and the cameras were rolling, and that was okay with me. But we had a dispute. But look, he's in a tough situation, a very tough situation. He's been fighting a much bigger force, much bigger. And that force has not been very distinguished, It's been a lot tougher than they thought, but it helped them when we gave them $350 billion worth of weapons or cash.
The US president also addressed the future of Crimea.
Is Zelensky ready to give up Crimea, do you think, Mr. President? Oh, I think so, yeah. Look, Crimea was 12 years ago. That was President Obama. They gave it up without a shot being fired. So don't talk to me about Crimea. Talk to Obama and Biden about Crimea.
I was just wondering what Zelensky thought.
And remember, this is Biden's war. This isn't Trump's war. I came in to try and solve a problem. And the problem is so many people are being killed.
Trump rebuked Russian President Vladimir Putin after that meeting, saying on social media that there is no reason for Russia to shoot missiles into civilian areas.
In a major escalation of its support for Russia, North Korea has admitted for the first time that it deployed troops to fight in the Ukraine war, part of a growing military alliance sealed by a treaty between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin.
North Korea has officially confirmed it sent troops to fight alongside Russia in the Ukraine war, marking the first public acknowledgement of its direct military involvement. According to state media, leader Kim Jong-un approved the deployment under a strategic partnership treaty signed with Russian President Vladimir Putin last year. North Korea claimed its forces played a key role in helping Russia regain control of the Kursk region. According to Ukrainian officials, an estimated 14,000 North Korean troops were sent, including 3,000 reinforcements. Lacking armored vehicles and drone warfare experience, they took heavy casualties but adapted quickly. Earlier, Russia confirmed North Korean troops fought in the region, highlighting growing military ties between the two nations.
US officials said that ongoing talks with Iran over its nuclear program will continue, though many unresolved issues remain to be negotiated between the two sides. US President Donald Trump sent his special envoy Steve Witkoff to the Middle East on Saturday to meet with Iranian officials. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Obay Shabandar, has the latest.
The U.S. and Iran concluded on Saturday the third round of nuclear talks and agreed to meet again on May 3rd, according to the foreign minister of the Arabian Gulf state of Oman, which is hosting the talks. A senior American official told Axios that the talks with Iran were, quote, positive and productive, but there's still a great deal more to be done. The talks in the Omani capital of Muscat on Saturday was the first time that the parties dived into the technical details of a potential nuclear deal, particularly focusing on the limitations that the U.S. wants to impose on Iran's covert nuclear program and the sanctions that Iran wants the Americans to lift. The talks took place between working-level teams from both sides and between the chief negotiators, White House envoy Steve Witkoff, and Iran's foreign minister, Araghchi. A senior American official said that the third round of talks lasted a little bit over 4 hours and included direct and indirect engagement between the American and Iranian teams. The next round of talks will take place in Europe. President Trump said in an interview with Time magazine that was published on Friday that he thinks that he can strike a deal with Iran on its nuclear program without having to resort to a military solution, and that he is open to meeting with Iran's leadership. Reports in Washington suggest that Israel was preparing a strike against Iran's underground nuclear sites, but the Trump administration was non-committal in supporting the strikes, wanting more time to pursue a diplomatic option. President Trump has not ruled out a joint American-Israeli strike on Iran's sensitive nuclear facilities in the future, but he cautioned he does not want to rush into a conflict without exhausting all other options. I'm Ubay Shabandar in Washington, D.C., A News.
The death toll from the explosion at Iran's largest port, Bandar Abbas, has risen to 40, and more than 1,200 people were injured. Rescue operations are still underway. The massive blast hit the Shahid Raja'i section of Iran's Bandar Abbas port. Authorities say chemical materials likely caused the explosion, halting operations at one of Iran's most important trade hubs. President Masoud Pezeshkian has ordered an investigation and sent his interior minister to oversee emergency efforts. Relief teams and firefighting planes are working to control the fires while trucks are being evacuated. The world continues to mourn Pope Francis, from the historic funeral in Rome to the first visitors at his simple tomb. People are paying tribute to the late pontiff who led the Catholic Church for 12 years.
Hundreds of people queued on Sunday in Rome as the tomb of late Pope Francis in St. Mary Major Basilica opened to the public. The Vatican released images of the Pope's tomb showing a simple marble slab that reads Franciscus. Above it, a replica of his plain iron cross symbolizes the humility he embraced throughout his life. Pope Francis, who led the Catholic Church for 12 years, chose to be buried at the Basilica of St. Mary Major instead of the traditional papal crypt at St. Peter's. Visitors spoke of their admiration for Francis's humble spirit.
Well, I feel like it's exactly in the way how was the Pope. So he was simple, and so it's his place now.
Meanwhile, around 200,000 people packed St. Peter's Square for a mass in the pontiff's memory, led by Cardinal Pietro Parolin. The ceremony marked the second day of the traditional Novendiali prayers that follow a pope's death. In Barcelona, a spectacular drone show lit up the night sky, creating emotional images of Pope Francis to honor his memory.
It was spectacular and emotional to be able to live this moment and to think that he's no longer with us. It was very beautiful.
Pope Francis, who passed away at the age of 88, was honored with a public funeral on Saturday at St. Peter's Square, attended by world leaders and hundreds of thousands of faithful. After the funeral, Francis' coffin, placed on a white Pope-mobile, made a slow procession through Rome. Around 140,000 people lined the streets, applauding as the hearse crossed the Tiber River and passed iconic sites like the Colosseum and Piazza Venezia. As mourning continues, attention now turns to the upcoming conclave to select the next leader of the Catholic Church, expected to begin in early May.
Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan visited Qatar. He met with the country's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani in Doha on Sunday, as part of ongoing diplomatic efforts between Ankara and Doha. The visit comes amid close ties between Turkey and Qatar, establishing a strategic partnership since 2014. Both sides work closely on regional issues like Gaza and Syria, and bilateral trade topped $1 billion last year. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian is visiting Azerbaijan today. The visit is aimed at strengthening bilateral cooperation and friendly ties. That's according to reports from the Mehr news agency. The publication also states Iran, by contributing to the reduction of regional tensions, could facilitate the resumption of the Julfa-Nakhchivan railway connection and enhance trust between Baku and Yerevan. In addition, the development of cross-border markets, cooperation with regional organizations and dialogue on strategic issues, such as the legal status of the Caspian Sea, serve as the foundation for strengthening bilateral relations. Leading NGO representatives from over 110 countries gather in Baku today for the founding conference of the Global South NGO platform. Our Orkan Amashov has more from the venue.
Hello. Good morning from Baku, from the Baku Congress Center. Today is a very important day in the history of Azerbaijani civil society organizations, and by extension in the history of civil society organizations encompassing wider Global South region. And today the Global South NGO Forum is taking place, inaugural forum. It's not just first of its kind, but truly first ever Global South NGO Forum. And it is widely expected that during the course of this forum, the platform, Global South NGO platform, will be established. There already original idea, of course, goes back to COP29, as we all remember, back on 15th of November in 2024, the South-to-South cooperation with regard to climate action event took place during COP29. The idea first voiced back then it was sort of formulated into a proposal, into initiative, backed by more than 1,000 civil society organizations representing 137 countries. And today it's widely expected that this proposal, which was first voiced back then, will be supported and this platform will be established. Of course, we have to understand the essentials of the South-to-South cooperation. What actually lies at the heart of this cooperation? There's a need, as many civil society organizations, their representatives believe, there's a need for joint action and advocacy involving countries which are located within this wider geography. This geography is massive, is vast. There are countries which are mostly, the substantial majority of this geography is comprised of developing countries. Some of the countries could be classified as landlocked developing countries, least developed countries, and the representatives from civil society organizations representing these countries will be present today. And the forum will take place today and tomorrow, and it's widely expected that the platform itself will be that permanent, inclusive, multilateral mechanism itself will be declared, will be announced today. Orkun Amashov, A News.
During his state visit to China, President Ilham Aliyev spoke to China Global Television Network, outlining the growing strategic partnership between Azerbaijan and China, their economic collaboration along major transport corridors, and their shared commitment to the principles of sovereignty and multilateralism.
So that was a very important milestone in our cooperation.
In his interview to China Global Television Network, CGTN, President Aliyev underlined the strength of political ties between the two countries, particularly following the signing of the Declaration on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership.
Our countries demonstrate solidarity and friendship on the issues of national interests. We strongly support each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We strongly support one China policy, and we were among the first countries which publicly and openly denounced the illegal elections in Taiwan. Other part of declaration cover broad range of issues, starting from trade, transportation, people-to-people contacts, humanitarian partnership, and of course, our joint initiative. So the substance of this document is very important. So signing a declaration with such a country is really an important achievement for Azerbaijan. I can tell you that Azerbaijan signed declaration on strategic partnership with many countries in our region and also with some European countries, but China is the strongest among them. So that's why I think the extreme importance of this document, once again, is obvious.
Turning to economic cooperation, President Aliyev emphasized Azerbaijan's ambitions within China's Belt and Road Initiative. He highlighted the country's strategic location and extensive transport infrastructure as key assets in developing business opportunities along major trade corridors.
With respect to the Belt and Road, for us, this initiative is not only a kind of a transit route. We want to build businesses en route, because our geographical location is advantageous. We are situated on east-west and north-south transportation corridors, and with respect to connectivity, we built already all infrastructure: railroads, seaports, highways, 8 international airports. We have one of the biggest on global scale air cargo company. So our target is to build business en route, and of course we count on Chinese companies. Less than a week ago at the business forum, there have been different companies from both countries, and they signed investment agreements to Azerbaijan worth more than $300 million. I said today to my colleagues that for us it's a good number, but I think it can be bigger.
President Aliyev also stressed Azerbaijan's commitment to promoting the interests of the global South, noting China's leadership role in supporting sovereignty, equality and multilateralism in global affairs.
Azerbaijan is an active member of Global South. We demonstrated it not only in non-alignment movement chairmanship, but also as a president of COP. We are president of COP29, and we held a COP29 conference where I personally strongly defended the interests of Global South and raised the concern of countries of Global South with respect to the existential, to some countries, threat with respect to climate change. And we in Azerbaijan consider China as a leader of Global South. So this is a special role which we think China is playing, uniting countries among particularly those principles of non-aligned movement, so-called Bandung principles. They actually reflect all what you said, plus sovereignty, territorial integrity, non-interference into internal affairs, equality, and multilateralism, and no domination of any country or group of countries. So this is a principle which is very close to us, and we defend it, protecting our national interests and being a very active member of international community.
President Aliyev's remarks come amid a wider strengthening of Azerbaijan-China relations, marked by mutual support for sovereignty, expanded economic cooperation and shared global values.
That's the world news for the hour. Stay with us on A News for more updates throughout the day.